Hey guys, welcome back to An Open Book. I'm your host Stella, and today we're going to be reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 3, The Letters from No One. So before we start, I have two things that I want to explain to you, and it is that, first, that this chapter, the Chapter 3, is going to be a pretty big cliffhanger. It ends pretty, abruptly, and you will be begging for more. Just trust me, I love this series. And number two of the things I wanted to say are that as it was Father's Day a couple of days ago, I think on Sunday, I'm not completely sure, but it was earlier this week, and that was really fun, and I thought about it on Father's Day, and I decided that there's going to be special holiday edition episodes, so, the big ones, like Thanksgiving, Halloween, Christmas, and Easter, so, I'm going to be doing big stuff those days, just making it fun, coming out with some awesome stoof, and, maybe, and the 4th of July, because, of course, the 4th of July needs something interesting, so, yeah. And after that, I was good. I just thought of this, and that's that, so if you guys live in, I don't know, I think it was saying, Pacific time is gonna get it first, but before we start, I found these, sites. And basically, one says that there's going to be a new game. It says this on Pottermore. And it says that there's going to be a new, Wizarding World game. So I know there's, there's a Harry Potter game already. But then there's going to be something on Wizards Unite. And it's we somehow get transported into the Muggle world. We can't get out. Yada, yada, yada. I don't know. Anyway, but, you just have to get your way through the Muggle world and all that. And I think it looks really good. So I'm going to check that out. And, yeah. Chapter 3, The Letters from No One, and the escape of the giant Brazilian boa constrictor earned Harry the longest punishment he ever had. By the time he was allowed out of the cupboard again, summer had started and Dudley had already broken his new video camera, crashed his airplane, and, on the first try on his racing bike, knocked down Mrs. Figg as she crossed Privet Drive on her crutches. Harry was happy school was over, but there was no escaping Dudley and his gang, who came to the house every day. Piers, Dennis, Malcolm, and Gordon were all big and stupid, but as Dudley was the biggest and stupidest of the whole gang, he was the leader. The rest of them were all quite happy to join in Dudley's favorite sport, Harry hunting. This was why Harry spent as much time as he could out of the house, wandering around and thinking about the end of the summer, where he could see a small ray of hope. When September came, he would be going off to what Brits call secondary school, and for the first time in his whole life, he wouldn't be with Dudley. Dudley had been accepted at Vernon's old private school, Smeltings. Piers was going there too. Harry, on the other hand, was going to Stonewall High, the local public school. Dudley had a good laugh at that. They stuffed people's heads in the toilet the first day at Stonewall, he told Harry. Want to come upstairs and practice? No thanks, said Harry. The poor thing has never had anything as horrible as your head down it. It might be sick. Then he ran before Dudley could make out what he said. One day in July, Petunia took Dudley to London to buy his Smeltings uniform, leaving Harry at Mrs. Figg's. Mrs. Figg wasn't as bad as usual. It turned out she'd broken her leg tripping over one of her many cats, and she didn't seem to like them as much as before. She let Harry watch TV and gave him a bit of chocolate cake that tasted though she had had it for countless years. That night, Dudley paraded around the living room for them in his brand new uniform. Smeltings kids wore maroon tailcoats, orange knickerbockers. I don't know what that is. I didn't know what it is until my mom explained it to you. Explained it to me. So she was telling me that knickerbockers are big old pants. I don't really know. There's button pants at the they're pants that go down to a little half of your sorry, they go up to half your shin. And they button there, and I don't really know. I don't expect maroon tailcoats and orange knickerbockers to go together very well. Just saying. And they also wore straw hats called boaters. They also carried knobbly sticks, and for hitting each other while the teachers weren't looking. This was supposed to be good training for later life. As he looked at Dudley in his new pants, Vernon said gruffly that this was the most proud moment of his life. Petunia started crying and said she couldn't believe it was her icky Dudleykins. He looked so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust himself to say a thing. He thought 2 of his ribs might have broken from trying not to laugh. There was a horrible smell in the kitchen next morning when Harry went into it for breakfast. It seemed to be coming from the big old metal tub in the sink. He went to go check what was in it. The tub was full of what looked like dirty rags and gray water. "What's this?" he asked Petunia. Her lips tightened up, as they always did if he ever asked a question. "Your new school uniform," she said. Harry looked in the bowl a second time. "Oh," he said. "I didn't realize it was going to be so wet." "Don't be stupid," she snapped. "I'm dyeing some of Dudley's old clothes gray for you. It'll look just like everybody else's when I'm finished." Harry doubted this very seriously, but thought it would be best for him not to argue. He sat down on the kitchen table and tried not to think about how he was going to look the day of his first day at Stonewall High, like he was wearing a bunch of elephant skin, probably. Dudley and Uncle Vernon came in, both with their noses all wrinkled because of the smell from Harry's supposedly new uniform. Vernon opened the newspaper and vanished behind it, while Dudley banged his smelting stick on the table as usual, because he carried it everywhere. Sorry, I'm very, I have allergies this time of year, and yeah, they're just, getting on my nerves. They heard a click from the mail slot and the flop of the letters on the mat at the door. "Get the mail, Dudley," said Vernon from behind his paper. "Make Harry get it. Get the mail, Harry. Make Dudley get it. Poke him with the stick, Dudley." Harry dodged the stick and went to grab the mail. 3 things lay on the doormat. A postcard from Vernon's sister Marge, who was vacationing on the Isle of Wight, a brown envelope that looks like something like a bill, and a letter for Harry. Harry picked the letter up and stared at it, his heart twanging like an enormous rubber band. No one ever had written to him in his whole life. Who would? He had no friends, no other relatives. Also, he didn't have a library card, so he'd never gotten rude notes asking for his books back. Yet there it was, a letter, addressed so plainly there could have been no denying it. Mr. H. Potter, The Cupboard Under the Stairs, 4 Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. The envelope was heavy and thick, made of yellowish paper, and the address was written in an emerald green ink. It didn't have a stamp. Turning the envelope over, his hand shaking, Harry saw a purple wax envelope seal bearing some sort of coat of arms, a lion, eagle, badger, and a snake surrounding the letter H. "Hurry up," shouted Vernon from the kitchen. "What are you doing? Checking for some sort of letter bomb?" He then laughed at his own joke. Harry walked back to the kitchen, still looking at his letter. He gave Uncle Vernon the bill and the postcard, sat back down, and slowly began to open his letter. Vernon ripped open the bill, snorted in disgust, and flipped the postcard over. "Marge is ill," he said to Petunia. "Ate a weird whelk." "Dad," said Dudley. "Dad, Harry has something." Harry was about to unfold his letter, which was written in the same heavy paper as the envelope, when it was jerked out of his hands by Uncle Vernon. "That's mine!" said Harry, trying to grab it back. "Who's writing to you?" sneered Vernon, shaking the letter open with one hand and looking at it. His face went from red to green faster than traffic lights, and it didn't stop at that. Within seconds, his face was the color of porridge. "Petunia!" he gasped. Dudley tried to get the letter and read it, but Vernon held it way out of his reach. Petunia took it and looked at it curiously and read the first sentence. For a moment, it looked like she was going to faint. She grabbed her throat and made a choking noise. "Vernon! Oh my... Vernon!" They stared at each other, seeming to have forgotten that Harry and Dudley were still there. Dudley wasn't used to being ignored. He gave his father a hard tap on the head with his smelting stick. "I want to read that," he said loudly. "I want to read that," said Harry angrily, "as it is mine." "Get out, both of you," croaked Vernon, stuffing the letter back into the envelope. Harry didn't move an inch. "I want my letter," he yelled. "Let me see," Dudley demanded. "Out!" screamed Uncle Vernon, and he took Harry and Dudley by their necks and chucked them into the hall, slamming the door behind the two of them. Harry and Dudley promptly had a furious but completely silent fight over who would listen at the keyhole. Dudley won, so Harry, his glasses hanging from his ear, lay flat on his stomach to listen at the crack in the door. "Vernon," Aunt Petunia was saying, her voice quivering, "look at the address. How could they know where he's sleeping? You don't think they're watching the house?" "Watching, spying, might be following us," muttered Uncle Vernon. "But what should we do? Should we write back? Tell them we don't want to?" Harry could see Vernon's shiny shoes pacing up and down the kitchen from under the door. "No," he said finally. "No. We'll ignore them. If they don't get an answer, yes, that's the best thing. We won't do anything." "But I'm not having one in the house, Petunia. Didn't we swear when we took him in that we would squish out that dangerous nonsense?" That evening, when he got back from his work, Uncle Vernon did something he had never done before in his life. He visited Harry in his cupboard. "Where's my letter?" asked Harry, the second Vernon had squeezed through the door. "Who's writing for me?" "No one. It was made for you by mistake," said Vernon shortly. "I burned it up." "It was not by mistake," said Harry angrily. "It had my cupboard on it." "Silence, boy!" yelled Vernon, as some spiders fell off the ceiling. He took a couple deep breaths and then forced his face into a smile, which, for him, looked very painful. Yeah, Harry, about the cupboard. Me and your aunt have got to thinking. It's getting to be a bit small for you. We think it might be good if you moved into Dudley's second bedroom." "Why?" asked Harry. "Don't ask questions," snapped Vernon. "Take your stuff upstairs to the room. Now." The Dursleys' house had 4 bedrooms, one for Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia, one for visitors, which was usually Uncle Vernon's hideous sister, Marge, one where Dudley was sleeping, and one where Dudley put all his toys and the stuff that couldn't fit in his first bedroom. It only took Harry one trip to move all the things he owned from the cupboard to this new room. He sat down and stared at everything around him. Nearly everything in here was badly broken. The month-old camera was lying on top of a small working tank that Dudley had once driven over the neighbor's dog. In the corner was Dudley's first TV set, which he kicked through when he found out his favorite TV show had been canceled. There was a giant bird cage, which had once held a parrot that Dudley had swapped with someone at school for an air rifle, which was up on a shelf with its end all bent around because Dudley had sat on it. Other shelves were full to the brim with books. They were the only pieces of stuff in the room that looked as though they were the only thing that had remained untouched. Dudley sounds like a very intelligent boy, doesn't he, guys? Yep, very intelligent. Oh, goodness. From downstairs came the sound of Dudley crying at his mom. "I don't want him to be in there. I need that room. Make him get out!" Harry sighed and stretched on his bed. Yesterday he would have given an arm and a leg to be up in this room. Today he'd rather have the letter down in his cupboard than being up here without it. Next morning, breakfast was rather quiet. Dudley was in total shock. He'd screeched, whacked his dad with his smelting stick, thrown up on purpose, kicked his mom, and thrown his turtle through the roof of the greenhouse. And he still didn't get his room back. Harry was thinking privately about his time yesterday and heartily wishing that he would have opened the letter in the hall. Vernon and Petunia kept looking at each other grimly. When they got the mail, Vernon, who seemed to be trying to be nice to Harry, made Dudley get it. They heard him smacking stuff with his stick all the way up and down the hallway. Then he yelled back, "There's another one here! Mr. H. Potter, the smallest bedroom, 4 Privet Drive." With a yell, Vernon leapt from his seat and charged down the hall, Harry on his heels. Uncle Vernon had to wrestle Dudley to the ground to get the letter, which Harry made difficult by grabbing Vernon around the neck from behind. After a minute of weird and confused fighting, in which everyone got hit a lot from Dudley's stick, Vernon got up, gasping for breath, with the letter in his hand. "Go to the cupboard. Bedroom," he wheezed to Harry. "Dudley, just go." Harry walked around and around his room. Someone knew that he had moved out of the cupboard, and they seemed to know that he had not received the first letter they had sent him. Surely this meant that they would try again. This time, Harry was going to make sure that happened. He had a plan. The newly repaired alarm rang at 6 o'clock the next morning. Harry turned it off and dressed silently. He must not wake the Dursleys. He ran down the stairs without turning on any of the lights. He was going to wait for the mailman on the corner of number 4 and get the letters for his house first. His heart hammered as he crept across the dark hall toward the front door and Harry leapt into the air. He had stepped on something huge and squashy on the doormat. Something alive. Lights went on upstairs, and he realized he had stepped on his uncle's face. Vernon had been lying in front of the door in his sleeping bag, clearly making sure that Harry didn't do exactly the thing he had been attempting to do. He shouted at Harry for about 30 minutes, then told him to make a cup of tea. Harry walked away miserably into the kitchen, and by the time he got back, the mail had gotten there, right into Uncle Vernon's lap. Harry could see 3 letters addressed in green ink. He started, but Vernon was tearing the letters into pieces before his eyes. Vernon didn't even go to work that day. He stayed at home and nailed the mail slot in. "See," he told Petunia through a mouthful of nails. "If they can't even deliver them, they'll give up." "I'm not sure that'll even work, Vernon." "Okay, these people's minds work in strange ways, Petunia's. There's not like me and you," said Vernon, trying to put in a nail with a piece of fruit cake that Petunia had just given him. On Friday, no less than 12 letters came for Harry. As they couldn't go through the mail slot, they were pushed under the door, slotted through the sides of the door, and even forced through the downstairs bathroom window. Uncle Vernon stayed home once more. After burning all the letters, he got out a hammer and nails and put boards in the cracks around the front and back doors in the house so no one could get out. He was humming Tiptoe Through the Tulips as he worked and jumped at small noises. On Saturday, things began to get a bit out of hand. 24 letters got into the house, rolled up and hidden inside each of the 24 eggs that their immensely confused postman gave Petunia through the window. While Vernon made angry phone calls to the police office Why would the police be giving you your post? The post office, and tried and deli, trying to find someone to complain to. Petunia shredded the letters up in the food processor. "Who in this world wants to talk to you so badly?" Dudley asked Harry in complete amazement. On Sunday morning, Vernon sat down at the breakfast table, looking tired and sick, but happy. "No post on Sundays," he reminded them cheerfully as he spread marmalade on his newspapers. "No dang letters today." Something came hurtling down the chimney in the kitchen as he spoke and hit him sharply on the back of the head. Next moment, 30 or 40 letters zoomed out of the fireplace like hummingbirds. The Dursleys ducked, but Harry leapt into the air trying to get one. "Out! Out!" Vernon grabbed Harry and threw him into the hall. When Dudley and Petunia had run out with their arms over their faces, Vernon slammed the door shut. They could hear the letters streaming into the room, bouncing off the door and walls. "That does it," said Vernon, trying to speak calmly but undermining the statement by pulling giant tufts of hair out of his mustache at the same time. "I want you all back so we can leave in 5 minutes. We're leaving. Just pack some clothes." "You will not argue." He looked so dangerous and scary with half of his mustache missing. Oh my goodness. Missing? Half of his mustache was missing. Guys, please teach me how to talk. I cannot talk. With half of his mustache missing, that no one dared to argue. 10 minutes later, they had wrenched their way through the closed-up doors and were in the car, speeding on their way to the highway. Dudley was sniffling in the back seat. His father had hit him around the head for holding them up while he attempted to put his TV, VCR, and computer in his bag. They drove and drove. Even Petunia didn't ask where they were going. Every now and then, Vernon would take a sharp turn and drive in the opposite direction for a while. Shake him off, he would mutter whenever he did this. They didn't stop to eat or drink all day. By night, Dudley was howling like a wolf. He'd never had such a bad day in all his life. He was hungry. He'd missed 5 TV programs he had wanted to see, and he'd never gone so long without blowing up an alien on his computer in a video game. Vernon stopped at last outside a grim-looking hotel on the outskirts of the huge city. Dudley and Harry shared a room with twin beds and damp, musty sheets. Dudley snored, but Harry stayed awake for hours, sitting on the... How I spell my words. I really, really need to write this better because it says, sitting OMG the windowsill. OMG the windowsill. And I meant to write on the windowsill. OMG, look at that windowsill. Oh my lord. Sitting on the windowsill, staring down at the lights of passing cars and wondering. They ate stale cornflake cereal and cold tinned tomatoes on toast for breakfast next day. They just finished when the owner of the hotel came to their table. "Excuse me, but is one of you Mr. H. Potter? I only got about 100 of these at the front desk." She held up a letter so that they could read the address in green ink. "Mr. H. Potter, room 17, Railview Hotel, Cokeworth." Harry made a grab for it, but Vernon knocked his hand away. The woman stared. "I'll take them," said Uncle Vernon, standing up quickly and following her from the dining room. "Wouldn't it be better to go home?" Petunia suggested. Hours later, but Uncle Vernon did not seem to hear her. Exactly what he was looking for, none of them knew. He drove into the forest, got out, looked around, shook his head, got in the car, and off they went again. The same thing happened in the middle of a field, halfway across a bridge, and at the top of a multi-level parking garage. "Daddy's gone mad, hasn't he?" Dudley asked Petunia, dully late in the afternoon. Vernon had parked at the coast, locked them in the car, and disappeared. It started to rain. Giant drops beat on the roof of the car. Dudley whimpered and sniveled. "It's Monday," he said to his mother. "The Great Humberto's on tonight. I want to be somewhere with TV. Monday." This reminded Harry of something in particular. If it was Monday, and you can count on Dudley for the days of the week because of the television, then tomorrow... Tuesday was Harry's 11th birthday. Of course, his birthdays weren't considered fun. Last year he was given a coat hanger and a pair of Uncle Vernon's old socks last year from the Dursleys. Still, you didn't turn 11 every day. Uncle Vernon was back and he was smiling. He was also carrying a long, thin package and didn't answer Aunt Petunia when she asked what he'd bought. "Found the perfect place," he said. "Come on, everyone out." It was very cold outside the car. Uncle Vernon was pointing at what looked like a large rock way out at sea. Perched on top of the rock was the most miserable little shack you could imagine. One thing was certain. There was no television in there. "Storm forecast for tonight," said Uncle Vernon gleefully, clapping his hands together. "And this gentleman's kindly agreed to lend us his boat." A toothless old man came ambling up to them, pointing with a creepy grin at an ancient rowboat on the water, bobbing up and down and around. "I have already got us some food rations," said Uncle Vernon, "so all aboard." It was freezing in the boat. Icy spray and rain went down their necks and wind ripped at their faces. After what seemed like a million hours, they reached the rock, where Vernon, slipping and sliding, led the way to the broken-down house. The inside was horrible. It smelled like seaweed, the wind whistled through the gaps in the walls, and the fireplace was wet and empty. There were only 2 rooms. Fun. Vernon's ration turned out to be a bag of chips for each and 4 bananas. He tried to light a fire, but the chip bags just smoked and shriveled up. "Could do with some of the letter now, eh?" He said cheerfully. He was in a very good mood. Obviously, he thought nobody stood a chance of reaching them here in a storm and sea to give the mail. Harry agreed in his head, though the thought didn't agree with... Oh, my goodness. Harry privately agreed in his head, though oh, my Lord! Harry privately agreed in his head, though the thought didn't cheer him up one bit. Finally. As night fell, the promised storm blew up around them. Spray from the high waves splattered the walls of the hut, and the wind rattled the dirty windows. Aunt Petunia found a few moldy blankets in the second room and made up a bed for Dudley on the moth-eaten sofa. She and Vernon went off to the lumpy bed next door, and Harry was left to find the softest bit of floor he could find and curled up under the thinnest, most ragged blanket. The storm went on and on more ferociously as the night kept on. Harry could not sleep. He shivered and turned his body over, trying again to get comfortable, his stomach rumbling with hunger. Dudley's snores were drowned by the low rolls of thunder that started near midnight. The lighted dial of Dudley's watch, which was dangling over the edge of the sofa on his fat wrist, told Harry he'd be 11 in 10 minutes. He lay and watched his birthday tick nearer on the watch, wondering if the Dursleys would remember it all, wondering where the letter writer was now. 5 minutes to go. Harry heard something creak outside. He hoped the roof wasn't going to fall down on them, although he might be warmer if it did. 4 minutes to go. Maybe the house in Privet Drive would be so full of letters when they got back that he'd be able to steal one somehow. 3 minutes. Was that the sea slapping hard on the rock like that? And 2 minutes. What was that funny crunching noise? Was the rock crumbling into the sea? 1 minute, and he'd be 11. 30 seconds. 20. 10. 9. Maybe he'd wake Dudley up just to annoy him. 3, 2, 1. Boom! The whole shack shivered and Harry sat bolt upright, staring at the door. Someone was outside, knocking to come in. That was the end of Chapter 3, The Letters from No One. So, before you guys leave, remember to tell your friends, rate me 5 stars on iTunes, and remember to listen to me on these podcast platforms: Podbean, iTunes, Radio Public, TuneIn, Podcast Addict, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Overcast.fm, Stitcher, TuneIn, oops, I already said TuneIn, Acast, Castbox, Google Play, and I think a couple more, but I don't know. It comes with being on iTunes. So thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast, and have a good rest of your day. I hope you enjoyed. Bye, guys.